This is Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool, nerdy happenings at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond. From books and concerts to search engines and story times, the library nerds are in and ready to show you that being a nerd can be cool. Get ready, get set, get nerdy. Welcome back to Library Nerds with Words, the podcast where you get the word on all the cool things happening at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond, straight from the mouths of the people who know it best, library nerds. I'm Marty Achatz, the adult programming coordinator for Peter White Public Library, and joining me in the Nerd Clubhouse today is Berkeley Thompson, Teen Zone patron and a New York Times author. Welcome to the podcast, Berkeley.
Thank you very much, Marty.
Now Berkeley is a lifelong PWPL library nerd, starting out in youth services when she was a little girl. You might say that she has library in her blood. Last year, she took first place in the teen poetry writing competition for the Great Lakes Poetry Festival, and most recently, Berkeley participated in Write On, a teen writing workshop that was sponsored by the Teen Zone. So I think Berkeley has earned a place in the Library Nerd Hall of Fame. You know, you really do belong there.
I have never been so honored, honestly.
Well, Berkeley, before we get into talking about Write On and your article that was published in the New York Times, we have to play a little game of Word on the Nerd. Now, I'm going to ask you 3 library nerd questions about yourself, and you have to answer them for the listeners. So, Berkeley, are you ready to play
Word on the Nerd?
Okay. Berkeley, this is going to be a little game of Would You Rather. I'm going to ask you 3 Would You Rather questions, and you have to truthfully answer them for the listeners. And all of today's questions have something to do with writing and books. Okay, so Berkeley, here's your first question. Would you rather have lunch with author John Green, or would you rather have lunch with author Toni Morrison?
Well,
difficult choices, I know.
Well, yes, it's extremely difficult. Well, I think I would rather have lunch with Toni Morrison.
All right.
Do you want to hear why?
Yeah, I absolutely want to hear why.
Well, I like both their books. I like books. I like all books. Mm-hmm. But you picked some great writers. I do think that people my age don't know much about Toni Morrison.
Oh, probably not.
I think I think John Green gets a lot of attention, and of course it's deserved. Mm-hmm. But I sometimes miss hearing like as much about the authors that write like different and maybe a little more.
Well, Toni Morrison is like an iconic writer.
She is.
And, and her books have been like banned from high schools and stuff, especially, I recommend books to Berkeley sometimes.
The Bluest Eye was number 5 again on the most banned books, most challenged books from 2023.
That book
that list just
me.
Dropped Monday.
Yeah.
That book, I couldn't. I felt like I needed to put it down, but I couldn't.
It really is. Couldn't. And by the way, that other voice you heard is Amanda from the Teen Zone. She's up here with us. So, anyway, yeah, it's amazing. Granted, it's considered more of an adult book, but it's just a stunning book. And like you said, John Green gets a lot of attention, and he always ends up on the banned books list too. So, but Toni Morrison's just amazing all the way around. So
completely brilliant. I think I would just be absolutely honored and stunned and overwhelmed to just see what's inside her head.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know what to say to her. So, unfortunately, she passed a while ago, but, so the opportunity is gone, but boy, I would have given my right arm to just be in the same room with her at some point in my life.
As long as you leave another to type with.
Exactly. All right. Now, Berkeley, the questions might get a little harder from here on out. So here's your second question. Would you rather have to write a sonnet in 15 minutes? Or would you rather have to write a short story in 15 minutes?
Honestly, I think the answer is short story.
Okay, I kind of figured you would lean that way, but go ahead.
Yes. Short stories, well, when I write, sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm writing about until I'm, 3 paragraphs in. Mm-hmm. And a short story, even though it's like a subcategory in a subcategory,
mm-hmm.
It feels like there's so many places I could go from that. And when you have only 15 minutes, I want to, give myself as wide of a berth as possible.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. A sonnet is a very particular form with very particular things that you have to do, with meter and rhyme and everything. So, not an easy form. But on the other hand, as a poet, I would pick the sonnet. And as a fiction writer, a person who focuses mostly on fiction, not that you're not a great poet, because you are, but I think it would be probably a little easier for you to do the short story. All right. Well, see, I haven't stumped her yet. Let's see. Last question. Would you rather live in a library or would you rather live in a bookstore?
Seeing as a few days ago I discovered just how many libraries that you can borrow from using interlibrary loan, I think that my answer is and always will be library, because I hope I'm not abusing the postal service or anything, just ordering one book after another from all the libraries across.
Well, and there's so much more. Not that to say anything against bookstores, but there's so much more that you can get in a library. And if you're really stuck in a library and have to live here, there's some libraries will have stuff you can cook in, and there's microwaves and stuff like that. So you can there's so much that a library has to offer.
Yeah.
So I would agree. See, I agree with you on every single answer. Okay, well, I didn't stump her this time, Amanda, but, we'll see. All right. By the way, when I said this time, that means that you are going to be coming back eventually and doing another guest appearance, because once you're on the podcast, I never let you go. All right. So we have come to the end of this literary edition of Word on the Nerd, this time with Berkeley Thompson, writing nerd extraordinaire from the Teen Zone here at PWPL. So now we're going to find out what is on your mind today, Berkeley. It's a little segment on the podcast we call The Word. All right, Berkeley, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a writer?
I've been writing for a long time.
Now wait, let's let readers know, how old are you?
Oh, I'm 14 years old.
14 years old, so you're a freshman in high school.
Yes.
Okay.
Gosh, I've known you since you were 4 or 5.
Does that date you? Make you feel a little old?
We moved here in 2024, and David joined the department when it was the communications department, and your mom was in that department, so whenever they had the department Christmas parties and the get-togethers, you were always there with your family along with us.
All right.
So yes, it does date me. I feel super old.
I don't feel that old, but that's all right. So anyway, go ahead. All right.
Yeah, I've been writing my whole life. I was always the one that my parents would task with writing those cards to extended family. And at birthday parties in elementary school even, I think all good writers, all writers probably, have gotten made fun of a little bit.
Oh, I would say so, yeah.
At birthday parties, I would write, pages to, people probably that I knew just a moderate amount. And
as gifts, you would give them as gifts, or what?
And I would, or either as gifts or with gifts, I would, write, poems or letters inside, little drawings.
That is so cool. I never would have thought of that as a kid, to do that.
Well, it was mostly because I, forgot of a gift till the last minute, and words are, words are always there.
Yeah, it's true.
And then I feel like I was, in quarantine when I wrote when I made a Google folder, for all the little snippets I gathered, and there are clear pieces of writing that stand out to me as pivotal points, when I turn from one thing to the other, both that I've written and read. Here at the library, I remember one day just walking through the new nonfiction section downstairs, that tiny little cart. I found just like the poetry section, and there was a book there by Ada Limon.
Oh my gosh, Ada Limon.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I remember I remember she wrote the one that I don't know why I can't forget it. It's just I guess I always pictured like Border Grill and a very vivid experience. That she has this like poem called "I Recall in a Mexican Restaurant How Much You Upset Me," and it was so beautiful. And then I read another one called Peanut Butter.
I don't know that. I know the one about the Mexican restaurant, but not the one peanut butter.
This is not by Ada Limon. This is by someone else.
Okay.
I feel like I should remember too. I should remember who.
We're gonna Google quickly here.
Yeah. It was a beautiful poem, and it's by Aline Miles.
Okay.
And I remember that as like another poem that kind of shifted something in me a little.
Yeah, you get that where you're reading writers. I mean, believe it or not, I was young once too, and I would do the same thing. I would like really get into some writer, and I would learn something from that writer and apply it to what I was doing, and it would change what I would do. And I mean, I think that's how writers grow is from listening and reading other writers. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's just there's so many different writers, and I love poetry. I mean, I told you I write quite a bit of fiction, but I go back and forth, and I love how distinct, like, the author's voice, the diction is with poetry. I feel like everyone's writing style is so unique. It's very beautiful and very inspiring.
Yeah.
In 7th grade, I entered, like, you have that spring poetry contest for the teens. I entered that, and I remember I didn't place anything. But I remember hearing one poem. I think it was the first place. It was called I Love Words.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't read it since, but I remember listening to it then, and I remember, like, thinking... I just remember... of really wanting to write something like that, and I don't know, I felt like someone had like given me a really big gift just reading me that.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, what are some other writers? You mentioned Ada Limon. Who are some of your other writers that you just love?
Of course, Audre Lorde.
Oh yeah.
I think, that they're like, I don't know, I'll remember specific lines of poems I've read and not remember like who or what poem they're from, but they'll stick with me for a while. And then, I mean, Amanda Gorman, of course. I mean, who can't? That's a name
There's
you've
something
heard
wrong
before.
with you if you don't like Amanda Gorman, so...
Yes, very wrong. And then outside of poetry, I don't know. I really, of course, like Alice Walker and Toni Morrison. The Color Purple and the Bluest Eye. They were. I had been reading just like a lot of just like fun books I picked up in the teen section, and then Marty came in like some writer like. I don't know, beacon of awareness, and took my hand, led me to this section of like writing, and then I emerged from the book a different person.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to love those kinds of transformative books.
Yeah. And Alice Walker, Toni Morrison.
Oh, yeah.
Two really great writers to emulate. Just so amazing. Okay, now tell me about your experience with Write On. Let's hear about what you thought about this program. Now, I'll explain to listeners. Now, Write On was a program. It was sort of funded by, it's sponsored by the Teen Zone here at PWPL, and it was funded by a really generous donation from a really wonderful woman who was an arts supporter in the area. Her name was Helen Haskell-Ramin. Great friend of mine, and sadly she passed a couple years ago. But she published one last book. She was working on a manuscript, and another friend of Helen's and myself, Gayla Malherbe, who is another poet, great poet, we put together that manuscript, edited it, and sent it out. And Helen's family wanted to do something in honor of Helen that would be in Helen's spirit. And Gayla and I came up with this idea of a teen writing program here, and that's how this came about. So we did like 2 months, 6 weeks, I think it was, of writing workshops with various writers from the area, really great writers from the area, who sat down with the teens who participated, including Berkeley, and just took them through different writing exercises. And we had some really, really great writers that did that, and I was so excited to participate. So I just wanted to explain what Write On. So let's hear your experience with Write On.
It was absolutely incredible. I mean, I know that there's a lot of value in, like, being exposed to a bunch of different people with different ideas, but I have never felt so at home in, like, just a room of, you know, like-minded people, and not necessarily like-minded in every way, but in the way that we all wanted to write. And we had kids from all ages, but I feel like I just gained so much just listening and learning from the people that you brought in. It was absolutely incredible, and I produced, like, quite a bit of, you know, work in those sessions, but outside of that too, I feel like I had been maybe waiting a little bit. Like, I wait for a good idea, and the Write On, it definitely taught me not only to look, but how to find good ideas.
Yeah, and there were so many different writers with so many different ways of doing things. Truly, because I mean, I know I did one session, I facilitated one session, but my friend B.G. Bradley was there, and he's a totally different kind of writer and approaches it differently. You had Gayla who did it. You had Troy Graham who came in, who was fantastic. You know, Troy Graham is like a dynamo in a room when he's doing stuff. He's just so fast and boom, 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 let's do this. And then you had Christine Sari, who is amazing. Yes. Just sitting and listening. I could sit and listen to Christine tell stories all day long.
I could. I think we did.
Yeah, I mean, she talked about her growing up in Austria, and her losing her father during World War II, and she's always amazing to listen to. But she is really a wonderful woman who really loves sharing, especially with young people. She loves young people. And she was so excited to come in and meet all you guys. We just had so many great writers. And not only that, I'm talking about the facilitators, the people who led the workshop, but we also had really great writers in the teens. I mean, every single person that was there really created and produced some amazing things. And that includes Berkeley, who, now this is what's really amazing. The piece that she wrote during Write On, got published, right?
Yes.
In the New York Times Sunday edition.
It
How did this happen?
Well, during Write On, we had learned a lot about writing and the many different, like, pieces of writing, and one, like, I feel like, I'm not sure who it was that spoke to us about, like, conciseness, but like having conciseness, but also having detail, evoking, like, emotion, but you know, showing, not telling, all of the things that you hear. There were so many of those ideas floating around in my head, and this actually happened during exam week. Okay. And after the exams finished, we were just sitting in this, like, room, this very dark room, and without much to do, I went on the New York Times website, and I was reading through all of their modern love column. I was also sick and feeling very sentimental, and so I read through, I think it was the past 2 years.
Wow.
Now the modern love column, if you haven't read it, it's amazing. There's a podcast too, and there's a lot of it too. So there was a lot to go through, and at the end there was, like, a little button, and it said, submit your, like, tiny love story here. And I just clicked on it. And it had to be short. It had to be 100 words or under.
Wow.
And I am not good at writing short.
I can vouch for that. I love Berkeley's writing, but you know, you give Berkeley a topic, man, she's, like, off to the races, and it's like 3 pages later you get something. Right. So
I was nearly late here today because I was tasked with a 5-minute presentation, and I gave it 12.
All right, so go ahead. So
yes, and so I opened a Google Doc, put, like, the word count on, and I typed up a story. So my grandma, she is probably, it's about her and her friend. she's one of the most amazing people in my life. I've written a lot about my family, and I've written a lot about the people and things that matter a lot to me, and my grandma is definitely one of them.
Awesome.
Yes, she supports me in every way, and I love her stories. She told me a really, really sweet one about like her and her friend. They were best friends and still are. Since they were children, when my nana would get the yolks and her friend would get the whites, and they would take 2 eggs and split them. It was so sweet, and I thought that this was a great example of like a place where you could just put something sweet into words and try and share it. I didn't actually think that the New York Times. I didn't think that it was going to be picked up at all. But then I got an email a few weeks, like a month later, and it just went on from there.
Wow. Now, I love stories like this, like. Because I do this too. I send out stuff, and then you forget about it.
You do.
You absolutely forget about it.
You'll get rejection letters.
Or you get a rejection letter, and then you post those on the walls as like this is my wall of shame, but also it's an inspiration because I always tell this to young writers and any writer. Every rejection is one step closer to an acceptance, right?
You said that. I just remembered that you said that you do say that you said that at the teen poetry thing every
Absolutely.
year.
Every rejection is one step closer to an acceptance. And when you get something like that in the mail, like you've forgotten about it, and you go, wait, New York Times, what is this? And then you open it up and you're like, you sit there stunned, right?
Absolutely stunned.
Yeah.
Like
you probably were like, if it's anything like me, when my book got accepted for publication, I had forgotten that I was like 6 months prior, I'd sent it to the publisher, and I thought they'd just thrown it out or recycled it or started fire with it. And I thought, oh, this isn't going anywhere. And then I get this letter from Apple Press, and it was very tiny and very thin, which is a really good indication that it's just a standard rejection letter. This was before the time of electronic submission and everything. That's how old I am. And and I opened the letter, and the first paragraph, the first sentence, I had to read like 5 times. It's like, "We are pleased to let you know that we've accepted your manuscript for publication." And I sat there, I think for like 10 or 15 minutes, just stunned. I think I might have cried a little bit too, It's just that thing when you work on something and you it's like something you wanted to do for so long. So what was your initial reaction?
Well, I mean, I hope this doesn't make me sound very young. I mean, maybe it's not too bad if it does.
No.
I actually opened up my email and received that letter when I was on the school bus home.
Yeah.
So I'm the person who would do a cartwheel or jump up and down. I'm very very loud about my excitement when I'm excited.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
But the first thing I did definitely was just I sat there stunned, yes, and then I called my nana because I mean, it was one thing. I know she gets so proud of everybody. She's proud of me. She's proud of my friends. She's proud of people that she doesn't know. And it would be sweet enough, I know, like, to see her face, to tell her, like, that, hey, I'm being published in the New York Times. But then, that's, like, it's totally magnified by the fact that it was inspired by, and just like everything I write and do, for her.
Yeah. And what was her reaction when you told her?
She was speechless. It was so sweet. And then it was amazing.
I've met your grandma because she, I think, was at the awards ceremony last year at the Great Lakes Poetry Festival.
Yes.
So
yeah, she's amazing. One of, like, I don't know, there are people nowadays. Everyone has, like, places to go, things to be, things that they're trying to, like, get done and do, and she feels like completely safe, completely like home. I know it's a cliche, but it's so true. And I feel like when I am, like, halfway across the world or in deep in, like, some dissertation, something I don't want to be doing, I can think of, like, her voice when I told her, and I can just think of her face, and I know I'll be fine.
It's amazing to have someone that's supportive of everything that you do. And, because lots of family members, if you say, hey, I want to be a writer when I grow up, they'll go, well, that's really nice, but why don't you try, like studying, I don't know, refrigeration, so you have something to fall back on, right?
Yeah.
But that's amazing to have someone like that.
Yes.
Okay.
I have, and I'll tell, like, my other family members, I'll, like, say, okay, I wrote something. Do you want to hear it? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, sure, tell us. And then and they'll read it, and they're like, oh, that's really good. And then just...
That's my least favorite thing to hear. I hate that. It's
that's really good.
Oh, that was really good. And then they turn to something else. I hate that.
Yeah, but yeah, my Nana, she's just the kind of selfless where, like, you don't even think that she's doing it for any other reason. It's just because she was made that way.
Yeah.
And she, if I read her something that I wrote, I have to make sure that we don't have anything to do afterwards because she wants to talk about it. She wants to talk with me, and that's not something everybody works. Everybody has places to go and, things to see and other things to do. But when I read her my writing and she and I talk about it, and it eventually leads to some other beautiful story or memory that she can tell me about. It's like, we're kind of stuck in a wonderful place of storytelling where, no other, like, 20th century limitations exist.
Wow. Well, I think that's prelude to you sharing what you wrote. I'm so excited to hear this.
I was shocked when I heard, as I've said, and just it's been a ride because I've gotten, like, so many letters from other, like, family members and friends, people I haven't seen in years who've, like, read it and want to tell me, and it was, like, so incredibly validating, like, after so many, like, rejections or, like, after some time you feel like, it's so fun to write, but if you ever get worried that it might not be, like, something that you can do, just, like, seeing, like, your writing somewhere, like, anywhere, honestly, it's very validating.
It really is.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to hear this.
Yes.
This is the first time I've heard it, too, so let's hear this.
It's called The Whole Egg. My Nana doesn't like egg whites, but she eats the whole thing anyway. Why? I asked one morning, as Nana's lips puckered in distaste. I watched her chew the soft edge of her sunny-side-up egg. Just put them in the compost, Nana, I advised. She smiled. June always liked the whites, Nana said, and I finally understood. June was her best friend, with whom she split every egg. Now that June's memory is fading and they live too far away to meet in person, Nana eats the whole egg. That's the kind of friendship that lasts longer than a lifetime.
Wow, that's really profound and beautiful.
Thank you.
I love the imagery in there of the egg. The whole egg. Where you have it's sort of like I'm your grandma and her best friend together are the whole egg.
They are.
Right?
They are the whole egg.
the whole egg, and so she eats the egg in memory of her friendship. That's really beautiful.
It is.
That
yes.
is so beautiful and so exciting that you got that published. I mean, how many people can actually go around and say, "Hey, yeah, I've had something in the New York Times." I can't do that. So that's pretty amazing. Now, are you sending more stuff out to get published?
Yes, I am. Honestly, sometimes I see something, like, it'll pop up my Google feed, like, here, so-and-so looking for submissions, and I'll maybe, plop something in and then forget about it. No, nothing big that I'm thinking about so far. The Scholastic, the Scholastic Awards.
Yeah.
I submitted there, and in February I got a silver key and 2 silver keys for pieces I wrote.
Nice.
And yes, that's awesome. But then, yeah, I haven't been submitting many places as much, and I probably should. I have been with the writing that I've, compiled during, like, the time at Write On, and then also before and after. Gayla has, there's so many amazing people. She's not only a great editor, she's just I mean, I know she's a busy person. She's a mom. She has a full-time job. I think she has like multiple jobs that she does.
Yeah, she does.
And yet she found the time to help me edit a large amount of poetry and my writing, and so me and her are working on a chapbook right now.
Okay. Yeah, that was the other part of Write On. If
Yes.
any of the participants wanted to, they could take their writing and compile it. We were going to help them. And I'm sure that eventually I'm going to, because I got a copy of your manuscript too, I'm sure that Gayla's going to come to me and we'll go through it and make sure, because that's the process that she and I have developed. But yeah, she's incredibly giving and she's so committed to helping young writers, as Helen was. I mean, Helen would be so excited, and even if she had never met you, she would be so proud of you for what you've accomplished so far. So that's just amazing. It fills my heart with just gratitude that we were able to do that.
Yes.
In Helen's memory. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, I really wish I could have known her, because everything I've heard, everything I've seen, she seems like the best person.
Well, you know what? After we're done recording, I will show you a video I have of her reading a poem on top of Sugarloaf.
Oh,
so
yes.
I will show you that,
Absolutely.
because it's amazing. So, okay, well, I could talk about stuff like this with you forever, but, I don't think that people are going to want to sit for 3 hours and hear this. So, anyway, that is the word. Many words from a teen author, Berkeley Thompson, on her writing journey and her participation in Write On and her journey toward being a New York Times author. But I can't let you out of the fortress of nerddom just yet, Berkeley. First, I need to find out what you've been reading that's good. Something that has been distracting you during the day or maybe making you lose sleep at night. If you're anything like me, I do lots of reading at night. So, Berkeley, what book would you recommend listeners pick up off the shelf? So what have you been reading that's good, Berkeley?
Well, no, that's quite difficult. Yesterday actually, in geometry class, I brought a book and I picked up. It was called Chlorine by Jade Song.
Chlorine?
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't exactly know what I was getting into. It was very, very fascinating. It's this story about this this first generation American or Chinese American swimmer. Her name's Ren Yu.
Okay.
And she's like a very, very dedicated swimmer. And the book, I won't spoil it for you, so I can't tell you much. But
I love spoilers, by the way.
I do too. Yes.
I go to the end of a book first, and I'll read the end first before.
It's a bad habit because sometimes I do that, and then I'm like, okay, now I don't want to read the beginning.
All right. So anyway,
yes,
she's
Chlorine.
a swimmer. Yep.
She's a swimmer, and it's like, I feel like it's been described well as like a coming of age story, but definitely mixed with the horror. It's absolutely fascinating. Not horror in like the typical sense or the sense you think of when you think of horror movies, but like horror, just like a level of like gross that feels so close to reality. And the book, I mean, it's got a lot of like, mixed reviews. I thought it was just fascinating. I started it in geometry. Now that's 4th hour. I did not stop reading. I finished it before the school day ended.
Wow.
It was completely riveting.
So you didn't learn much geometry that day.
Well, I had a test today, so we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. But that's all right.
Yeah.
When something grabs you by the throat like that, you just got to let it follow. You
Right.
just got to follow it.
Yes.
So it was called Chlorine.
Chlorine.
By Jade Song.
Yes, it was on your new shelf.
On the new shelf. And you know what? Any teen listening to this, if you're looking for a book, there's someone there who knows a lot about books that is really good at recommending them. That would be Amanda sitting right here.
And Berkeley does put up displays a couple times a year in the teen zone of
That's
Berkeley's
amazing
favorite
as well.
books.
That's amazing.
And it's
as
not
well.
just teen books. You pick out both adult books and some JFIC books in the past, too, that you've put up on there. So
Yeah. So, Berkeley, you're doing everything right. You're writing, you're sending stuff out, you're reading and learning from other writers, you're making friends with other writers. You are well on your way. I honestly believe 10 years from now, Amanda and I are going to be sitting at the library if I'm still here and still alive. And
better be here in 10 years.
Yes.
And Amanda and I are going to be putting up your newest book, and we're going to be saying we knew her when. That's what we're going to be doing.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. I swear, book people are the best people.
Well, you know what? That is true.
Yeah.
This is the best job I've ever had in my life, and it's because I'm surrounded by people like Amanda and yourself, and it just feeds my soul. So, all right, I hate to say it, we're coming to the end here. That's Berkeley's recommendation of a book that you should pick up off the shelf. And we have come to the end of this writing episode of Library Words with Nerds with Words with Nerds. I can speak. Mm-hmm. We have come to the end of this episode of Library Nerds with Words. I want to thank my good writing pal, Berkeley Thompson, from the Teen Zone for stopping by Nerdingham Palace. Come back next week when I will be joined by the amazing nerd duo of Amanda and Ben for a movie roundtable in which we discuss sports movies. And yes, Field of Dreams, here we come.
Yay, sports balls.
Until that time, everyone, stay nerdy. Thank you for listening to Library Nerds with Words, Peter White Public Library's weekly podcast, giving you the word on what's cool at the library. The theme for the podcast is Happy Clappy by John Bartman, used courtesy of Pixabay. This episode was written and produced by Martin Acketts and sponsored by Peter White Public Library. Until next week, pick up a good book, listen to some good music, watch a good movie, attend a great event, and remember, library nerds are the coolest people around.